What issues led to the emergence of political parties?
There were many, but I would identify three big ones. One was the question of what the scope of national power should be and how the national government should exercise its authority to shape the economy of the country. You had some people like Jefferson who really favored a much smaller role for the federal government and a much more agrarian, individualistic society. And you had others like Alexander Hamilton who wanted the federal government to create institutions like the Bank of the United States to facilitate national and interstate and international commerce. And so there was real questions about what the Constitution means in these vital aspects and how the federal government should use its powers. Second, there was a big difference of opinion on how the United States should relate to matters going on in Europe, especially tensions between Great Britain and France. Again, people like Jefferson, who were sympathetic to French ideals and appreciated the fact that the French supported Americans during the Revolutionary War, wanted the United States to weigh in on the side of France, whereas there was a lot of other people, again, like Alexander Hamilton, who were more Anglophile and who stressed the bonds culturally and economically that the United States had with its former parent. And so that was a big tension, and that affected things like immigration policy and immigration law. And then third, there were some laws passed during the 1790s by the so-called Federalist Party. And I should be clear, the Federalist Party is a different group of people than the so-called Federalists who supported the Constitution and who wrote the Federalist Papers. There's some overlap. But for example, James Madison was a huge proponent of the Constitution and an author of many of the important Federalist Papers, but he was not a member of the Federalist Party. He was a member of the opposing party, the Jeffersonians, the Democratic Republicans. But John Adams's Federalist Party, which controlled the White House and Congress in the 1790s, passed some pretty harsh laws, including the Sedition Act, which made it a crime to criticize existing members of government. And that was a very divisive law to pass.
What was the so-called Revolution of 1800, and what was its aftermath?
So it was a revolution only in the sense that it was a big change in power. It was not a revolution in the sense that the government structure changed. In fact, it was an example of how conventional we were becoming. In the election of 1800, you had a bitter contest between John Adams, who was incumbent, and Thomas Jefferson. They had gone at it 4 years earlier in 1796. Adams won and became president, and for reasons that are a little quirky, Thomas Jefferson, the head of the opposing party, became the vice president. The Federalist Party under John Adams did a lot of things like pass the Sedition Act. And so in 1800, Thomas Jefferson's party won a clean sweep. They won the White House and they won Congress, and they were going to totally change the direction of the federal government's policy. But here's the wrinkle. Because the Electoral College process wasn't smooth at that time, the Jeffersonian Party tied in its two leading candidates. Jefferson and Aaron Burr got the same number of votes in the Electoral College. Now, everybody understood that Burr was supposed to be vice president, not president. But technically, because there was a tie, the election got kicked into the House of Representatives, which was still controlled by the Federalists. And because the Federalists hated Thomas Jefferson, they almost made Aaron Burr president. And it was only after a lot of wrangling that Jefferson was made president and Burr was made vice president. And we fixed that possible improper inversion problem with the 12th Amendment afterward.